99 hustles. 99 hustles.
Welcome to the 99 Hustles podcast. I'm your host, Nick Carter.
And I'm your co-host, International Fees.
And today we're joined by another exceptional hustler. We're joined by Kristin Ostrander. How are you doing today, Kristin?
I am fabulous. Thanks.
Thank you for being on the show today, Kristin. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us. As Nick mentioned, Kristin is a serial entrepreneur, podcaster, and speaker. She co-founded mommyincome.com and hosts her own podcast titled The Amazon Files. Before we dive into your Amazon teachings and go into that, why don't you take us to the genesis of your entrepreneur story?
Sure. So, I've always kind of been entrepreneurial when I was a kid. I used to your parents would give you like school clothes money, you'd give you like a budget. And so I was always like shopping and thrifting, trying to make that money stretch as far as I could. I think that was like part of just woven into my being. And I would take candy bars and that I would get as a gift or get something and I'd sell them to friends. So, I kind of started.
So you were the kid that was selling candy during like lunchtime.
Yes, I was. Instead of using like my lunch money to purchase like a little milk or juice on the side, I'd be like, Let me see if I can save this, buy something to sell people. Yeah, I don't know. I just think it was part of my being. And fast forward several years, I was young, married. I met my husband while I was still in high school. I got married as soon as I was out of high school. I was 19, and he's in commercial construction. So it's just as a young couple starting out, I got a scholarship to college, but also had a baby the following year, and I really wanted to stay home and figure out how that was going to work for me. Plus, they kind of kicked me out of college when I didn't. Let me preface that by saying, because of I didn't declare a major. There was like nothing for me there. I took all the core classes, and they're like, you can't take any more classes until you kind of figure out what you want to do with your life. And I'll be like, and I'm out. So I just kind of I left there trying to figure out what I was going to do to make money because it was necessary. We were just a young couple, just kind of making ends meet, kind of broke really, and trying to figure that out. Well, I discovered I had some friends doing like direct sales marketing, like Mary Kay, Pamper Chef stuff, and I was like, that's not for me. So what's next?
Wait, you didn't want to sell knives door to door?
No, or makeup or food or anything door to door. And, I love I'm a people person. I love to talk to people. I could probably sell ice to an Eskimo, but that just wasn't my thing. It was like, that didn't appeal to me. But then I was buying some stuff on eBay at the time. Mind you, this was like the year 2003. So this was a long time ago. I'm like an e-com OG. So it's been a while.
Wow, yeah.
So you were using dial-up and buying stuff on eBay.
Not gonna lie, I was using dial-up.
Kristin, I'll be honest, I didn't even know e-commerce was around that early, because that's way before Shopify. eBay might have been,
I guess, the
eBay
original.
relevant at that time. I guess
that's where I started. I started on eBay.
Okay. Yeah.
So what I started with, I bought some things on eBay and it really appealed to me there. But I didn't think about selling on there until I thought, well, these other people are selling. So what can I sell? And when my second child was born, she, was like Easter or whenever holidays, and they wear like the outfit one time and you pay so much money for it, or like little baby Nike Air Jordans or something people buy. And then they're like, they wore them for like 2 weeks and then they're gone. What are you going to do with that? So I sold some dresses of my daughter's, either pretty much brand new or church one time. That's it. And I was kind of hooked from there because I bought this dress for like $50. She wore it one time and then I flipped it back on there for like $35. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like, I'm making the money back from using it. It just really appealed to me, and it was something I could do from home. So this is even back when I was receiving paper checks in the mail from eBay customers before they moved all digital. And so it was something I could do, like to hustle really. So I got some stuff. Once I kind of ran out of stuff to sell from my house, I started going to yard sales and thrift stores in the dollar store, and I was flipping DVDs from the dollar store, like exercise DVDs. This was like the year 2003, 2004, and there was like some exercise DVDs, yoga and different stuff, buying them for $1, flipping them for 15. And I was just like, once I started that process, there was no looking back. I kind of had that thrill of the hunt, plus the fact that I was making some really good money just with taking my kids to the dollar store and, buying some stuff. So that's kind of how the journey started. And as I continue to just grow here and there, as I'm raising my family, I mean, we're talking like side hustle here. I was busy with the kids and stuff like that, but we needed the money. So, when the nap times were happening, and actually invented something called the 15-minute hustle. And it was because my son was wild when he was my firstborn. He was like Curious George meets Dennis the Menace, just this wild kid. And I only had about 15 minutes to get anything done before he would undo it or destroy it or run out the front door. So I made like this master list of all the stuff that needed to be done at home and in the business and just mailing stuff and different picture taking things. And every time I had like a few minutes, I would pick something from the 15-minute hustle list and get it done. I didn't always finish it in that time, but it helped keep me on track for when I couldn't just sit down and do like time blocks or just block everything out. It was just like, I'm chasing a toddler, I'm doing some laundry, I'm burning the toast. Oh, and I have to ship eBay orders. And so it was just a way for me to be like 15-minute hustle. And so I kind of created that long ago. And I've been just practicing that strategy ever since then.
Kristin, let me ask you a question about, with how early it was in the e-com space. This is 2003. So a lot of times, 2003, mid 2000s, like a lot of times like now, right? If an entrepreneur wants to sell on Amazon or YouTube, they can listen to the 99 Hustles podcast. They can listen to your podcast. They can go on YouTube to like learn that business. Where in 2005, where did you go to like learn this information? Were you reading books, mentorship? How was it? Like,
it's called the school. It's called the School of Hard Knocks. Trial and error. It's called Oops, I lost some money on that. Don't do that again. It's called I don't know. So there was definitely, okay, I have a story about that because like in my book, I talk about this story because it was so relevant at the time. We were like rinsing paper plates kind of broke. So as I was trying to just make some income, there was this $50 book that I heard about. This was a little bit later when I really started to want to grow my business. And it wasn't just like let's make some grocery money, let's make some gas money stuff, but it was actually starting to turn into like more of a real opportunity in business. As my kids were growing, I had a little bit more time. And so as I'm growing into that, around 2007 or 8 or so, there was a guy that wrote a book and it was like the eBay Bible or something. I can't even remember the guy's name, Skip McGrath or maybe something like that. But anyway, the book was $50. And I know right now that doesn't seem like a whole lot, but then $50 was the difference between groceries or not. So, or gas in the car or not. And so I remember saving up to try to buy that book because I knew it would help me, but there just wasn't a ton of free information out there at the time. There wasn't as much access. I did read some blogs and do something like that. But the turning point for me with the learning was as I was starting to really, it was when my 2 older kids, the last one had gone to kindergarten. So now I had like all day to do work. And I was like, okay, now I'm going to really start, my business is going to take off now because now I have this time on my hands. And I started looking for mentorship, looking for learning and training opportunities. And there was one guy, his name was Chris Green. He's like the Amazon OG guru teacher. And he did this like radio program with another lady. And then he ended up writing a book. And that's how I got into Amazon. So I was listening to them and realizing that like I can expand from eBay to Amazon, and that Amazon was actually a more appealing opportunity because it was a lot more like standard retail, only with a little bit less of kind of the hustle and grind. So I didn't have to go out to thrifting to find my products. I could actually be legitimate and order wholesale or create some of my own products. So as I started learning, I did learn from people like Chris Green, and there's a couple other people out there. But as I was growing, I was just making some mistakes, falling on my face, losing some money, trial and error. And as technology was improving greatly, there started to be live streams and writing and podcasting. So I did have some later on training. But I ended up creating my own. That's kind of how Mommy Income got born, 2000 or so. It's because there wasn't a lot of information out there, and I had made a lot of mistakes. And so I thought, if somebody else, I was a mommy making income, and that's where Mommy Income comes from, that I thought, maybe there's some other moms out there who need to make some extra money, and maybe, direct sales is not their thing either. So I just started to create some training and just talking to people, sharing my knowledge, sharing my mistakes so that people wouldn't do the same.
No, that's incredible. I mean, well, first and foremost, mommyincome.com, that's an incredible domain to have.
Name, yeah.
Right. Like just, from the little experience that Nick and I have when it comes to like buying domains and no, like that domain in itself is worth X amount, I'm sure it's worth a lot of money. Just, were you in the space where, I guess if it was back then, there probably wasn't that much competition when it comes to like being able to buy a website or buy certain names that were just very simple.
And even like SEO too was probably a little easier back then too, right?
Yeah, but go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that you mentioning how you just were doing things, you were just making mistakes, go as you go. That reminds me a lot of one of our first guests, Nick, Michelle, when she told us to just do it ugly. It's like, oftentimes even Nick and I, like we sit around and talk about like, oh, well, this needs to look like this before we put it out, or this needs to sound like this before we put it out. And it's like, before you know it, nothing gets put out. You know what I mean? Because you're so focused on like the appearance of the content as opposed to just like doing it.
Perfection is the enemy of progress.
Yeah, the wise piece of advice I heard from Pat Flynn actually years ago was, if you're not embarrassed by the first thing you put out, then you put it out too late.
That's a gem. That's a Hustle Fam gem right there. I like that one. That's a gem.
I really wish I could claim that, but it was.
Oh, you claimed it. No, it's 2021. It's yours now.
But speaking of that, it's funny that you say that, because my first live stream ever, I had an opportunity with Facebook groups coming up, and I was sharing some of my Amazon experience, because I moved from eBay. I still do eBay in a different way. That's more of like my hobby now, just for what I do with that. I'm like full-time Amazon. But as we were transitioning into Amazon and I got the hang of that and I was sharing some information in groups, someone invited me onto their like live stream. And this was before Facebook Live. This was before YouTube Live. This was like when they had, I don't even know if you guys know what Spreecast is, but that was like just like a live webinar. It was so wonky. But anyway, They were doing a show. They invited me on. And then from me sharing my experience on there, people were like, wait a second, we need more of her. Like, what else does she have to say? So someone reached out and said, you should have your own show and just share some of your stuff. And so I was like, okay, why not? 6 months later, I launched my own show, 2014. And I've been doing podcasting, video casting ever since then. So So
you're just an OG of like everything that's popping right now is pretty much you were doing 10 years, 20 years ago at this point. You follow. So I guess that's a skill set, being able to identify trends, whether that's through research or just through like doing things and experience. Can you speak a little bit about seeing some of these platforms that you were on earlier blow up and you're kind of like, what is going on right now? Like I'm on eBay, and now eBay is, everyone knows what that is. Back when you're on Amazon, before most people knew what Amazon was, now you know what it. So like, can you speak a little bit to that and just seeing kind of that growth, like, in real time?
Yeah, I think as a business owner too, it's really, you have to be very adaptable, because every time you figure something out, every time something new comes out, then it's changing. So by the time, like for Instagram, for example, you finally figure out Instagram, you finally figure out hashtags, and then they add things like stories. Most people are like, stories have always been around, right? No, they weren't for a while. And then all of a sudden there's Reels, and then there's IGTV, and then there's YouTube Shorts. And like, how do you get used to all this stuff? And I think some of it is really just being able to pivot and being able to adapt to the changes, to see what works and what doesn't work, and not having that fear of just giving something a try. You don't know what you're missing out on or what's going to work or what's not going to work until you just give it a try, and can't be so scared that you have to figure everything out in order to just put something out there. Because there's lots of times, there's a delete button on everything, in case everybody didn't know. So if you want to put something out there and you're like, okay, that didn't work out, delete, the end.
Right. So I guess it's obviously a lot easier than it sounds in terms of just like taking risks. And coming from you and your perspective, like you're talking about, you were in a position where you said, it's $50 for a book was the difference between like food or gas. Like, what was that psychology like at the time where you're like, man, I really have to make it in whatever I'm doing, because I'm taking food out of the family's budget. Like, can you speak a little bit to that psyche? Because I'm sure there's plenty of people listening today that are like, I want to do X, Y, and Z, but I'm afraid that if I take the risk, like, can you speak to how like you were able to overcome that? Was this a natural thing, or did you have anyone in your corner kind of pushing you to say like, just do it?
You know, I didn't really have a ton of people saying just do it. I do have a very supportive, loving family, but you know, when you don't have a lot of choices, you do the best you can with what you've got, because what else is there? I mean, I could have gotten like a 9 to 5 job. I could have tried to go somewhere with that, but even financially with 2 kids at the time, and now I have 3, and you know, trying to figure all that out was like, by the time I go get a job, pay daycare, do this, that, like there was no money to be made. And I just thought, if I just continue taking, it was about small steps, because a lot of times people just, they want everything, they want it now. And we see everybody's like highlight reels and stuff, but we don't see all the hustle and grind that they put in, and late nights and early mornings, and, you know, all the kind of stuff that they sacrifice to get there. But what I think the driver really is that hungry people work because they have to, because they need to, because they have something that they desire. And I think part of it was the desire. I grew up with a lot of like money mindsets that were kind of negative, as far as just like, just live simple, just go to college, get a good job, and just like live simple. And you know, having too much money was kind of a bad thing. And it wasn't that it was, I had to kind of unsubscribe to those things I was brought up in, because you know, that was kind of instilled in me. And then I had to really realize that I was in control. I could be in control of my earning potential, and I could be in control of my freedom, and I wanted both. And so I was willing to make mistakes to be able to check that out. I'm naturally a little bit more risky than some people, because a precursor to what you guys are going to ask me later, but I'll just say it now because you're going to ask me anyway, is like my hustle mantra, which is failure is, I'm sorry, I stole all your
no, not at all.
Sorry, we can like rewind that.
Absolutely not. This is all natural. We're live with this one. We're not editing this.
I was thinking about it, and really it is, failure is better than regret. I want to live where there's no regrets. I would rather fail and fall on my face and go, oh, well, that didn't work. That's too bad. Because did you die though? Like, that's what I'm always asking myself. Did you die
though? I like that. I love it. That's a good one. Like, did you die though?
You might have embarrassed yourself, but I don't know a single human being that ever died from embarrassment. Your pride got hurt a little bit. Your ego, you might have had to hide in the corner for a while and cry. But seriously, you didn't die. I didn't die from rejection. I didn't die from losing a couple $100 on a bad product. I certainly didn't die by reaching out to someone and asking if they want, you know, to connect and try to, you know. So I think that's really kind of what we have to analyze, is what are we really afraid of losing or perhaps gaining? Some people self-sabotage because they're afraid of the success. What does that mean? Does it mean more responsibility, more visibility, and can they handle that? But failure is just better than regret. I don't want to live with regret, and I want to go out swinging, whatever that is. It's like, okay, I gave it my best, I gave it my all, and I'm okay if that's not going to be perfection or it's not going to work out, because what I can't live with is woulda, coulda, shoulda. What could have happened if I done this? What would have happened? That's just, to me, something that can't be undone. Failure can be undone. It can be reworked. It can try over. You can start over, and you can always make money. I feel like anybody always can kind of make money, but you can't undo regret. So that's part of what pushes me.
I mean, there were so many gems in that one answer. Like, I almost want to like peel some of that back, but like, it's profound that we hear this with everyone we talk to. There has to be a level of just having zero fear, right? Or even if you have fear, just pushing through the fear and still doing whatever you set your mind to, because that woulda, coulda, shoulda thing that you mentioned, I think the older we get is when people realize, or they start having those woulda, coulda, shouldas. When you're 40, 50, 60 years old, and you're like, man, I've been at the same place or the same company or the same lifestyle for the last 20, 30 years, and time just flew by. Like, we get so used to it. Like, everything is conditioned to make things just go by fast. Like, our work weeks are very programmed, Monday through Friday, X hours, this hours. You get a 2 days to yourself, technically, but really a day to yourself, because Sunday you got to prepare for Monday. So it's like you're constantly not being, given that time to kind of, take risks or really go for it. So you mentioned that growing up, you were kind of programmed to not take those risks per se and just go down a more traditional route. Was this something, were you always rebelling to that growing up, or was this like you got to a point and something happened and you're like, that's it, I've tried it this way for X amount of years, I'm just gonna do my own thing now?
Well, part of it was, I precursed that with, I was raised by a single dad. And he grew up in, his dad was a pastor and just grew up in a very humble, very poor home. And I just remember a specific moment in time, and this is the whole full story is in my book, but I talk about this money mindset and a lot of these different concepts in there because he just looked at it like you could, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous was like a show growing up that you just watched. And like people they were balling, they had everything. And I would look at that as like a 12-year-old and I was like, man, that's the life. Like, and it wasn't about the stuff. It was just more about like
the freedom.
Yeah, the humbleness that we lived in, and it was fine. I never needed or wanted for anything. So don't get me wrong there, but it was just that mindset of just live simple. You don't need a lot of things. You don't need a lot of stuff, whatever else. And I didn't think things and stuff made me happy. I was just thinking there's more than this. And I watched, both my parents are amazing. As a matter of fact, my mom is my full-time business partner in my Amazon business right now.
That's amazing.
But they both grew up, neither one of them went to college, and they just kind of had blue collar jobs and worked really, really hard. When my mom joined my business, she was working at a fine dining restaurant, probably 5 days a week. And she was in her mid 50s and her body was tired. And as I see some of these things growing up with both my dad and my mom, I didn't want that for myself. It's not that they had really strong hard work ethics, which I picked up on, but I thought there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way to where if at least I'm going to do something I like and enjoy. And, I'm not just going to sit in some cubicle office all day and just collect a paycheck. And this is just going to be how it is. I knew there was better. And I wasn't going to stop until I could find whatever that was going to be for me. And so e-commerce and that kind of hustle and that making my own way, it was kind of addicting in the beginning. And I just kept following that path.
Kristin, I love stories like yours because they really represent hustle, scrappy hustle. And I'm not going to take no for answer, and I'm going to get what I want. Right. And hearing your story, I'm just thinking about how like you now teach other like entrepreneurs how to do it. I bet like from your perspective of everything that you push past, you're not trying to hear any type of like excuses or people say that they can't do something, because you're like, listen, it can be done. You know what I mean? Can you talk a little bit about coaching students in your program and how that experience is? Yes.
As a matter of fact, you just said a bad word. You had no idea you said a bad word, but you said a bad word. In my house, can't is a bad word. No, seriously. This is what you're allowed to say. This is what, you could bring my 11-year-old in here right now. I'm like, okay, what's the C word that you're not allowed to say? What can you say instead? She will say this to you. You can say, I'm scared. You can say, I don't know how, or you can say, I don't want to. But you can't say that you can't. So you can pick one of those. And if you're honest with yourself, when you catch yourself saying, I can't, that's when you realize there's something there. You can't because you don't know how, you can't because you're scared, or you can't because you don't really want to. You don't want to learn how. It's not interesting to you. But like, let's just be real, because we can. One of my favorite, just the inspiration I draw from on a regular basis right now is Rob Mendez, Coach Rob Mendez. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he was born without arms and legs, and yet he is a football coach. He's a football coach. He's in a wheelchair. He's never played the game in his life, and he has overcome so much stuff. And he, one of his mantras is "Who says I can't?" And we've said this for years, so it was like just icing on the cake to hear from him. But like, that's really it. Who says that we can't do whatever we want to do? The only person that's saying you can't is yourself. So, using that can't. But when I'm talking to, like you said, with excuses and things like that, y'all, I've been through it. In 2012, my husband was injured at work, and we lost all of our income. We lost our house to foreclosure, and we had to recover from all of that. So you're dang right. I don't listen to anybody's excuses. I say, okay. I was like, if I can do this from zero, not once, but twice, so can you. And so, yeah,
that's incredible.
I have tough tough love for people, and tough love because I know they can. I know people are very, their potential is hiding inside of them. And the two things that hide them the most, that scare them, it's the fear of the unknown, the worry that what if. And I said, but what if you don't? What happens if you don't? Think about what that looks like if you don't do it, because we can kind of calculate all that in Dream Big Step Small, my book. I do talk about fear. I go to fear all the time with people. Trust the facts, not the feelings. And I think that's one of the main things I coach people on. I mean, I could give you Amazon how-tos. I could, all that kind of stuff. But
But it won't matter. Yeah.
People is their ability to push past their fear and think about what's possible, and then just take that next step towards that. The fear is what stops most people from getting anything they ever wanted.
There's so much to unpack in that one response. But no, I couldn't agree more with when it comes to like, what if you don't, the fear of what if I don't take this risk, right? Like, and the way things are set up is that fear is preyed upon, right? So like, there's a reason why people for the most part don't, or at least prior to like younger generations, never left their jobs. They'd come home every day saying how much they hated their job, but they feared losing that comfort of having a job or having like the certain aspects that come along with it, right? And this is not a podcast to just, shit on people having jobs. Like, that's not the point here. The point, right. You know what I mean? But the point is to inspire people to be like, hey, look, if you want to do more than just what you're doing, you absolutely can. And, it's possible. And, take that responsibility. And you mentioned like people sometimes are afraid of like the accountability of being successful, or the responsibility of being successful. And all these things are just like, if you actually go ahead and just experience some of that responsibility, you only grow. Like there's no other way to grow unless you're uncomfortable, right? You can't grow just by being comfortable. And what's that quote, Nick, that we used to always talk about? Was it Damon John? It was like, there's like in being broke, there's
the power of being broke.
The power of being broke.
The power of broke. There's so much. Yeah, there's just so much. There's so much to gain from not having anything. There's so much value in that, and like the lessons that teaches you can just carry you through the rest of your life. And there's so much just power in the struggle.
Yeah. And that's a stunt too, by the way. I like to say, like, now I did it once, lost it all, twice, and then did it again. Like, that is a true entrepreneurial like story that people don't talk about, right? Like they talk about like the shiny things, like, oh, I quit my job and now I make 6 figures a month and everything is great. It's like, but what about like when it wasn't great? What about when you lost it all and you could have easily went back to comfort and be like, you know what, I tried this. I got to, bite the bullet. Like, can you talk about that time frame a little bit more in terms of like, all right, you started to figure it out, you became, successful at it, and then everything changed. Like, how were you able, I mean, I feel like I already know the answer to this, but like, how were you able to push through the fear of being like, you know what, I know we don't have anything, but I'm going to keep pushing forward with this like radical idea?
It's about what's at stake and what you're willing to sacrifice, and what you really, really want. And what I really wanted was to have that sort of peace. I really want peace in my life. And one of the things that I need in order to do that is to be able to take care of the people around me. I don't know if you guys have ever heard this quote, and I can't even remember who it's from. I remember quotes all the time, but who they're from, I don't know. Is that if you want to take the island, you have to burn the boat so that you don't have a way to go back. So I want to take the island. So I go to the island with the boat and the boat's gone. I don't have a choice. This works or nothing. So I think like when we lost our house to foreclosure, that burnt the boat for us. We had no choice to burn the boat. The boat was gone. So now what? My husband healed from injury. He was able to, after a year and after losing the house, he was able to become healed and had surgeries and stuff and went back to work. But in the meantime, the business was just kept going. And I thought now is the time to go all in. This is all in, this is all we've got. And so when you have, and here's the thing about that hustle, right? Is that like sometimes in the beginning, especially in the beginning of a hustle, you have more time than you have money, right? Because most of the time it's the money that you're hustling for. And so you got to spend one resource to get the other. And we're all only, whether you're Oprah, whether you're me, you, the president, LeBron James, it doesn't matter. You get 168 hours a week. That's it. You cannot buy more. You cannot get more. There's nothing you can do about that. So your greatest asset is how you spend your time. And the moment I learned this, the moment that I realized that like I have got to do better with my time because I don't have any more money to put in to invest. I invested in education. I invested in reading every blog I could read, listening to every podcast, watching every video that I could, and then taking action on it. Because lots of people like to consume and listen and all that, and that's all fine and dandy, but you know, the rubber meets the road at some point. You got to put that into action and give it a try. And I think at the time I spent my time resource, which is the only one I really had, late nights, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. My husband would roll over and be like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm listening to this show. Shh, I'm taking notes." It's like 2 in the morning. But just all that to be like, because the drive to do that was not just for me, but because I wanted my children also to have some experiences I never had. We didn't go on vacations. We didn't have, I didn't mean all the finer things in life. I just kind of wanted maybe a little bit above average. I didn't get to go to like dance class or music lessons or anything like that because we just couldn't afford it. That's the phrase we're not allowed to say here. You can say it's not a priority. It's not a priority for our family. It's not a priority right now or something we can save for, but we can't afford it is not in there. Because yes, I will, but it might not be right now. It will be like something we have to prioritize. And so the first thing I wanted to go like on a Caribbean vacation. I had never been. My friends would go to Florida.
Where'd you go?
We went to Aruba and then Jamaica. I've been to Florida several times. I love islands. Just taking
Can't go wrong. And like, that's funny because Nick and I, in August, we went to the Dominican Republic with some of our other friends. And
in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico too.
You get a different appreciation when you go outside of like your normal place, or even when you leave America, when you leave the States and you see how other people live, and you see, at least in our experience, how happy people were when we would deem like, wow, they have nothing. They have the one thing that most people here don't have, and that's that peace you talked about, right? It's like they have peace because they're not looking at life the way we are here, where like everything here is like pretty much you're in a hamster wheel because you're just like you want to achieve this like freedom and peace, but it's like you need to, be financially free. You need to do X, Y, and Z to get there. But by the way, we're not going to help you get there. We're going to help you like fill a position that's never going to get you there until, well, if you work here for 40 years and then you retire, you'll get $1 million then if you started saving at 25. You know what I mean? When it's like, wait, I got to wait till I'm 65, 67 to achieve peace, or like to go go on vacation for the first time. Like,
no.
How does that make any sense?
I think at one point, talking to, your guys' point about, going and visiting other places and seeing how people live and seeing how actual happy they are, kind of goes to the point of, not just being successful for money's sake, but, I always, I believe that every single person has something to contribute to the world. You have your own story, you have your own gifts, you have your own, insights, and the world needs what you have. And so when you are able to grow into that and know exactly what you have to offer to the world, you could potentially have the keys to unlock someone else's prison. You've gone through something that you can help people with, and I feel like it's really selfish to hold that inside. You should be sharing and helping people. And so my reason for starting Mommy Income and doing all that was really to help other people, because it took me so long and so hard to kind of figure stuff out, and then finally meeting some mentors and finally kind of growing. But how could I have fast tracked had I had the help that I didn't have? And so because of that, I just feel like it's my mission, it's my calling to be able to be a hope dealer.
Hope dealer over dope dealer.
And I wanted to pause there on Kristin's point about you may have the key to unlock somebody else's prison. For anyone out there listening, a lot of times we hear from listeners, people feel like they don't have the expertise, or they're not, professional enough to talk about a topic. And I really like that quote, because the thing is, in order to be an expert, you just have to know more than the person you're talking to. And you never know who you might be able to help and what keys that you may have to unlock their prison. So a lot of people, if you're listening and you think that you don't have the expertise or you need some more experience or knowledge, just know that you could be an expert. There's somebody out there that you have a key for, and have confidence in it, you know?
Absolutely. Everybody's got a perspective. Everybody's got a background. Everybody's got a something that happened to them that is of value to someone else. It's a story. It's a quote. It's a parent that maybe taught you something. It's something you learned in a job somewhere. So the word expert, forget that. Everybody thinks that they're an expert at everything. Just be your authentic self and be able to share. Be vulnerable enough to share your mistakes, because you'll find so much more people going, oh yeah, I've been through that too. Or it might be the one thing that changes their life for the better because you were able to share what you went through and how you got through it, or how you're going through it, and understanding you're not alone. We all have this human connection with, there's nothing new under the sun, whether we're talking about the Dominican and people there and people here, wherever we're all from. We all share that human element of all those emotions and all those things, and circumstances can be different, but we always have that human aspect that can inspire and motivate and help somebody else.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's something that Nick and I even struggled with even coming up with this podcast. At first it's like, who really wants to hear from us? Like, who are we to talk about, like, being successful at whatever. And the beauty of this whole thing is that, like, no matter who we're talking to or whatever that specific niche that person is a quote unquote expert on, it's always it's more about their story and their journey than it ever is like whatever the business that they're currently in. Because at the end of the day, anybody can go, at this point in time, anyone can go online and Google how to do X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. And there's information there for free. But like you mentioned, that human element thing where we're all kind of connected. There's a reason why word of mouth is still the best marketing tool you could ever have, is because people want to feel connected to somebody to really feel it. Like, someone's going to listen to this. Someone in our Hustle fam is going to hear this story and be like, I 100% connect with what Kristin is talking about because I've been through this, or I went through that, or I was in this position. So it is very important at all times that people just are vulnerable enough to share their stories, share their journey on these things, because like you mentioned, you saying one thing could really change someone's life and be like, you know what, my house was also in foreclosure. That's the reason why I didn't want to do it, because I was too afraid. But hearing your story, and it's like, oh, if she can do it, I can do it. Like, why not? And I love that. I'm gonna do that too. Taking can't out of my vocabulary. I might piss some people off. Like, you want to hang? No, I can't. Excuse me. I don't want to.
Well, let's be real. How honest is that though?
Right.
There's definitely crafty ways to get around that. It's like, that's not a priority for me right now. I mean, what kind of person's going to argue with that? It's just like, they're kind of the jerk, right? If you say something, oh, I'm sorry, that's not a priority for me right now. I've really got things I'm working on, and that isn't part of it. They're like, oh, okay. Then. You're
like, time is the one thing that no one can buy. And because of that, I'm gonna be intentional and say that I don't want to attend because it's not a priority. Man, that's my new defense for any invitation I get. I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't. I won't be able to attend because it's not a priority to me. Thank you, Kristin. You've dropped so many gems today, but I'm definitely going to use that for my RSVPs.
Kristin, so I did want to ask you, so at this point in the journey, you're going through so much. I'm curious about the successful businesswoman that you are today, in each of the hardships, the housing foreclosure, and also initially just getting started, with eBay. If you being successful now, what would you give yourself as advice to that person back then, going through those hardships? What would you tell that person in order to keep going?
Never lose sight of what is most important to you, because if something is really the most important to you, that's enough motivation for you. A lot of people struggle with like motivation or being inspired, constantly having to be inspired, and I'm kind of tough. I'm going to just be like, okay, yeah, I've been there. I will hold your hand. I will give you tissues. I will give you a hug. But then it's time to get up and get moving, because we can't stay in that place forever. We got to have something that moves us forward. And that might be by choice or by by circumstances you can't control, like things like that will happen. It could happen to you, or you can make it happen to yourself. But either way, you have a circumstance you have to deal with. And do you want to stay in it forever? If you don't want to stay in it forever, what choice do you have? You can get up and take a small step. And that's why my book is called Dream Big, Step Small. Y'all, I'm talking real small. I'm not, I mean, people are like, oh my gosh, you have $1 million business. And, you know, when can you remember a time that, you know, when did you set that goal? I'm like, I never did. I never set a goal to have $1 million business. All I did was the next thing I needed to do to move the needle. And it didn't matter if it was hard. It didn't matter if I didn't know how to do it. I had to do it. So I broke them down into even smaller pieces in 15-minute hustles and be like, okay, I'm going to learn how to, you know, do this next thing, because this is what it's going to take to get me to the next step. So just one thing at a time. People are always like, this big dream, huge, big. And I really want people to understand what they want in life and really, really reach and dream out of their comfort zone. But when it comes to getting down to the nitty gritty, it's all about the action steps. So if you want this, and there's a gap between what you want and where you're at, and what is the next step, because you're not going to fill the gap overnight. You're not going to just jump from here to there, or even here to halfway. You just need to take one step forward. And I think people reduce that, or they dismiss it because they think, oh my God, that's just too small. That's too small of a step. But if here's an analogy I always like to use. It's like, if you wanted to build a brick path, like from, say, your front door to the sidewalk or to your garage or whatever it is, and you know, you have the materials or whatever, you buy the materials. If you set out one brick, if you had a plan of like how you wanted it to go, and every day you set out one brick, you went out there intentionally and you put one brick out there, and you did that every day for 90 days, you have a 90 bricks in your path. But the person that's like, okay, I got all this stuff and I got to wait for a big long Saturday or Saturday, Sunday to go out and put my path out there. And that's going to take all day. And then all of a sudden a week goes by, 2 weeks goes by, nothing happens, no path. But if you literally just went out there one time every single day with one intentional step, and you put one brick out there, 90 days, you have a path, or you have nothing because you felt like you needed to do it all at once. The small steps really are what adds up to the progress that people make. It's never really one big thing. It's usually an accumulation of all the small things that people did consistently to get where they are.
While you were saying that, it makes so much sense, because like you mentioned, everyone is oftentimes fixated on the big idea or the big goal, not knowing that that big goal is only achieved with every single day doing something towards that goal. Like you mentioned LeBron James. LeBron James isn't the player he is because one day he woke up and was like, oh, I'm going to dream about being great. It's like, no, I woke up and I worked at it every single day.
And he's also naturally gifted, but you know, it doesn't stop there with natural gift and talent. You have to work every day on top of that too.
I choose hustle over natural talent any day of the week, because you can have natural talent and hustle, and that creates amazing people, like LeBron James, superstars like that. But your average, I mean, most of it, let's be real, most of us are ordinary. Most of us are just kind of all average. I mean, you have your elite and all that kind of stuff, but you know, I'm not winning any Olympic medals. You know, it's not going to happen. But what you can't train, what you can't produce is passion and hustle for your own, your whatever it is that you have inside of you that you want. You cannot create hustle for people. They have to want it bad enough to do what it takes, small, big, or otherwise. And then it's, of course, along the way, you have to have people or things or something that continues, because you're going to have hard days. You're going to have days, like I said, yesterday was kind of a bad day. I had some issues going on and whatever else. And I was like, I'm going to go work at Starbucks. And my husband was like, yeah, right. He's like, first of all, you'll be there for 10 minutes and you'll be changing everything and running the place. He said, and then you'll just be miserable. And that's not going to work. He's like, so, okay, no. And it's kind of true. It's like, you've got to be able to a little bit. And let me be real about this. The generation, we need to toughen up a little. Like we're kind of a little bit entitled, and we kind of think like everybody should just give us everything. We should just have it, or it should just be easy. You're going to have to sweat some. You're going to get your hands dirty. You're going to get your knees stuffed up. This isn't easy stuff, but I promise you it's worth it. It's worth it if you stick it out. People try things for a few minutes and be like, oh, that didn't work out for me. And I'm like, okay, try it for a year. and then come back to me and tell me how it worked out. And so I think those are things that are really important, that we just gotta keep staying a little scrappy, even when we get comfortable, because scrappy is what got us where we're at.
Right. And you could even make the argument that it actually is easy. The hard stuff is waking up every day and doing something you don't want to do for the next 40, 50 years of your life. That's actually hard, because you don't have the control over the things that are, the most important things are the stuff you can't buy. Like you mentioned it, time, your hustle, like all these things you can't go to a store and buy. No matter how rich you are, you can't buy, your time back, or you can't purchase hustle from somebody.
Sold separately.
So
the hustle's sold separately, man.
The hustle's sold separately.
And it's expensive.
It's expensive. Yesterday's price is not today's price.
I know my daughter said that the other day. She's like, "When are you free?" I'm like, "Free? I'm never free. I'm expensive."
Yeah, I'm expensive. I'm intentional. It's a priority.
It's like, free is my favorite price, but I'm never free.
No, that's a fact. That's a fact.
All jokes aside, the funny thing about, those kinds of things is that really, you said something about it being easy, and I look at it a little bit different. It's like, they're both hard. Getting up, building a business, hustling, grinding, learning new stuff, failing, losing some money, gaining some money, losing it again, just back and forth. That's hard. And getting up and doing something you hate every single day just to make ends meet is hard too. So just pick the hard that leads to the place you want to go, because either way, it's going to be hard. You might as well do hard on the path to something you really want, rather than hard that just leads to a dead end.
No, that's facts. That's the easiest response to that is just that's a fact. You just pick the struggle that's going to lead you to whatever you're actually looking for. So figure that out first, maybe, and then go about that. So Kristin, with all of that, your journey, where you've been, where you're currently at, where you see yourself going in the future, would you look at yourself now and say that you're happy?
For sure. Happier than I've ever been. And it has way more to do with how I set boundaries for myself and for my time, and really prioritizing what's important to me. And I will tell you, for a lot of years, it was a lot of hustle and grind, and I had to stay up late and get up early, and I was sacrificing sleep and some of my health and even time with family. And I believe that there's no real such thing as balance. I know there's always people talking about life balance, especially with women. No offense to you guys or anything like that, but a lot of times with women, there is always this life balance, and you're a mom and your kids and you're this and that, and I'm thinking,
that's real, for sure.
But balance, I think, is just kind of a myth. It's kind of bogus. It's like you have to realize early on. The earlier you realize this, the better, within business or whatever you're doing, is that it's always going to cost something. It's going to cost. There's going to be a sacrifice to get something to where you want to. And so all you need to do really is being present in the moment that you're in, because sometimes, I'll be honest, sometimes I have to work till 6 or 7 at night, and I don't get to spend as much time with my children as I want to, but then reevaluating that for the weekends. That's why I do not work on weekends, and my weekends are for my family, for myself, for my kids. And sometimes it is, we'll save that for Saturday, and we'll hang out on Saturday. We will do all these fun things, but on Monday evening, I've got to do this, and you've got to do this. So I feel like there's just seasons of life and of business where you're just going to have to make sacrifice. When I was writing my book, the family and everybody knew, we had a meeting. It was just okay, look, I'm going to have to spend extra time because I'm running a business during the day. So this is extra time I got to do to write on this book, and I got to schedule and stuff. And so for that season, I had to sacrifice what's most important to me, which is my family. But it's just a season. So, having this perfect idea that everything is just always going to be in balance, it's just bogus. You have to figure out in the season you're in, what is the biggest priority for you, and just commit to it and own it, and know that it's just a season, and you can reorient your priorities at later time.
It's hustle fam. I don't know if you guys are feeling inspired like me, but I'm ready to work soon as all day and night tonight. Super inspired, man.
Absolutely.
Kristin, your story is just absolutely incredible. I know earlier you mentioned your hustle mantra. Just wanted to revisit that a bit, or potentially if you had another hustle mantra, or a quote or phrase that you run your business by. if you had to give like a final word to our listeners in the Hustle fam in the form of a mantra, what would those final words be?
Oh, wow. I keep going back to the failure is better than regret. I know a lot of people struggle with anxiety. A lot of people struggle with overthinking and just that worry and fear. And I will just leave you with trusting the facts, not the feeling. So when you feel that fear, write down the facts. You can get more in Dream Big, Step Small, the book that kind of gives you the 1-2 of how to kind of do this, because I know it's easier said than done to just be like, oh, no fear. I tell people all the time, I'm not fearless. I'm scared to death, but I'm going to do it anyways, because I'm more scared of not doing it and not moving forward, and what happens if I don't, then I am scared of, well, what happens if I fail? Like what is failure? You can't really fail if you actually learn something. You tried it out, you didn't really fail. So you learned what not to do maybe, but you never really actually, nothing's ever a complete failure. And so because of that, be willing to take the risk, because your why is worth it. Your why is worth it. No one's going to fight for your why except you. So it's worth it to take the risk, because otherwise, what is 80-year-old you going to say to you right now if you don't? So just, take the calculated risk and see what your potential is. Just do it.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, a loss isn't a loss, it's a lesson. 80-year-old you will be able to tell your grandkids like, oh, I did that. Oh, back in my day, I was on eBay before so-and-so. And you at worst, you have something to tell somebody else.
Yeah, worse, yeah.
At worst, you have either a cautionary tale, or you have something to bestow to somebody like, hey, look, like, this is what I did. This is my story. This is, it's incredible.
There's just one more thought that I was trying to think of this when you said it, and I couldn't remember at the time, but it just came to me, is give yourself permission to suck in the beginning. Because beginners are terrible. Like, we're all terrible. If you just start something, like, you're terrible at it, and you just have to give yourself permission and the ability to just be bad in the beginning, because you're kind of off the hook, right? There's no expectations. If you just say, hi, I'm a beginner, then people already know what to expect from you. They're like, okay, they're a beginner. And give yourself that permission to be bad in the beginning, because you can only grow from that. But people want to like start out with perfection. They want to start out at the expert level. And I'm like, no, you didn't earn those stripes. You got to start down here where it's like, we have to be humble enough to suck in the beginning in order to start learning what we need to do to get better at it. And I think a lot of people are just so afraid to suck that or too embarrassed to, that they won't even get started. So you just give yourself permission to suck in the beginning, to be a bad beginner, and grow up from that. Wow.
Kristin, I feel, again, you've dropped so many gems and different mantras within the episode that, we could damn near do a whole reel just on on the gems you dropped today. We mentioned in the beginning, but, after hearing your story, we really can't thank you enough for taking the time to be available today and share your story and be vulnerable and be that light to someone that's in the Hustle fan that's going to hear this and be like, you know what? It was on November 11th, 2021. I heard this story and my life changed because I decided to go do it. So for that, we thank you. And quickly, if anyone wants to, hear more about your story or potentially be a student of yours, where can they find you?
So I'm at mommyincome.com. I'm on Mommy Income everywhere. If you'd like to get the book, Dream Big, Step Small, it's on Amazon. It's on Audible if you want to listen to it there. All the social handles, including YouTube channel, is all at Mommy Income, Instagram, all the things. mommyincome.com. And of course, the book, Dream Big, Step Small, it's for anyone. It's not really about Amazon. It's really more about a lot of the principles that we talked about today, and how about just practical, take the next step kind of thing. So I encourage everyone to give that a listen or a read, and go chase your dreams. They're worth it. You're worth it. And you got this. Hope dealer.
Hope dealer.
You heard it, Hustle fam. The hope dealer is here pushing hope, and and we are more than happy to be customers. And with that, that's a wrap for this week's episode. Thanks for listening to the 99 Hustle podcast. Be sure to visit 99hustles.com to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our amazing bonus content. Please rate, review, and subscribe if you enjoyed this episode. Always remember, there are 99 hustles. All you got to do is choose one.
99 hustles.